Hello, everyone. Welcome back to I See What You're Saying, the Disciplined Listening Podcast. I'm Michael Reddington, and today it is my pleasure to welcome our next guest, David Zerfoss. As a Vistage Master Chair, David serves as an executive coach, not just to CEOs and senior executives, but to other CEO coaches as well. And much of the tremendous wealth of knowledge and experience that he shares day in and day out, he gathered while he served as the president of Husqvarna, where he led them to grow their sales revenue by 1,700% over his tenure with the organization. He is also the author of 2 books, Stress is a Choice and Stress Less, Enjoy Each Day. 2 books that, based on the titles alone, we could all take very important lessons for our personal and professional life. David is a fountain of knowledge, and I'm so excited to have him on the show today. We have a great conversation in store for you, and we thank you all so much for being here to listen to it today. We're going to go through topics like, surprise, how we can all reduce stress every day, not just as leaders, but in our personal lives as well. He's going to give many examples for the power of simplification, while also talking about why it is so important for us to be grounded in our sources. And he will explain that in much greater detail. And he's going to talk about a topic near and dear to my heart, which is the power of our words, positive, negative, in many different contexts. It's an amazing conversation. I'm so thankful we had the opportunity to have it and share it. And thank you all for being here to learn from David today. Before we jump in, let's thank our sponsors. As always, we start with Humantel. Please, if you've ever thought about developing the skill set necessary to understand what people are likely thinking or feeling at any moment by accurately identifying emotional shifts through their facial expressions and nonverbal communication, then you need to head over to humantel.com. Read their blogs, read their articles, check out their research, and then settle in and choose which one of their training programs you feel is right for you. I've done them all. I highly vouch for them. They're best in class. And when you select your training program, make sure you enter the code Inclusive25 for 25% off of your training. All that and more at humantel.com. For the professional interviewers, head over to certifiedinterviewer.com. That's where you can learn more about what it takes to qualify for membership, either at the organizational or personal level, how you can contribute to the organization, interviewer resources and tools, networking opportunities, online and in-person education events, and so much more. That is also where you can get all your questions answered about the Certified Forensic Interviewer designation. Who qualifies? What does it take to prepare and pass the exam? Once the exam is passed, how do you maintain your designation? What could it mean for your career and more? All those questions answered at certifiedinterviewer.com. And while you're online, please check out inclusive.com. That's where you can learn more about the programs our clients ask us to custom facilitate for their senior leaders, negotiators, business development teams, HR teams, and more, to teach them how to encourage people to share their everyday confessions in our high-value business and personal conversations. All of that and more at inclusive.com. Again, thank you all so much for being here week after week. We truly appreciate it. So now, without further ado, David Zerfoss. Dave, it is so great to see you. Thank you very much for taking your time to be here today. How are you?
I am doing absolutely fantastic, and I'm working on getting better. As I tell folks, I'm never down. I'm always up or getting back up in that
I love
process. But I am delighted to be with you. You have spoken to our Vistage groups. You, what we call a subject matter expert, and you certainly are that inside of it. And our groups are still relating that conversation of some several years ago in a powerful way. We're looking forward to having you again in 2025.
I appreciate it. I love the invitation to come back. And I just love your whole attitude, your whole approach. I'm up or I'm getting up. I can always get better. I love it. And I feel like that ties into something that I would love to talk to you about, which might be a little bit off center from a lot of the leadership conversations we've had. But you have written 2 books that focus on stress and stress relief. And I feel like that is something that impacts people in ways that they don't even understand.
Yeah.
And there's often ways to control that or at least reduce it in ways that they don't understand. So I'd love to start the conversation by asking you, how have you seen leaders transform themselves by working to get their stress levels under control?
Well, that is a great question, and I have to make a great contribution to my writer in that, which is my wife Barbara, and she was able to capture my thoughts in a more orderly fashion than I have. But however, it really comes from our heart. It's an interesting background to the book. It's really comes from speeches that I have done with our customers as president and CEO Husqvarna North America. And it was with our clients and customers that really complicated their business processes, and simplifying them was a way to grow, and what we could do to come alongside them to do that. So out of that grew just a conversation that we have that we learned in that process with everyone from every walk of life. They were what I call principles and laws, and those are the things you look for as a leaders versus shiny stuff. There's just a shiny thing. This is the buzz thing for the day. This is the buzz thing. I really try to focus on that. But at the source of that, Michael, is a really simple concept: is stress is where that tension between where you're at and where you want to be is not. It seems to be a unbridgeable gap at times. But the aspect of it is that uh, stress is a choice, and that's the name of the book. And it's for not just a passing statement. I was in church one Sunday as a busy president, CEO, and just on the run of life, and traveling like 80% of the time it seemed at that point. And the pastor was making a great point, is that the combination of our issues in our life is the things that we choose. And went on to state is that what it really was a choice. And so I said something in there is powerful, and I relate to, yes, stress is a choice. The aspect of it is, if it is not a choice, you're a victim. And a victim means is you can hear it in their conversations. You can tell it in a few minutes, maybe by they're sort of disheveled and going in a lot of different directions. But I have to do this. That's just the way it is, and et cetera, comments like that. So I can literally, in both coaching and in the fact when I was leading as a president of an organization, you can tell very quickly in about a minute or so where this orientation of that person is. Because if you don't have a choice, you're a victim. And I want people to be victors in life, including myself inside of that. So it is a conversation that happens. I just see folks get caught up in the swirl of the have tos. This is the only way it is, that which actually blocks creativity. They get focused from the amygdala, in other words, the fight or flight part of the reptilian part of our brains, and we never get to the neocortex in the front, where okay, what this looks like may not be really a danger or a problem, but I also don't want to take it lightly inside of for folks, but helping them to think in that process where they become a victor. It's a great quote from Viktor Frankl is that the one thing you can't take away from me is how I respond to you, to what you do to me. Yeah, the last of one's freedom is to choose one's attitude in any circumstance. Now, I don't know whether I could play above the net. As we know, he was a Austrian psychiatrist caught up in the war criminal, the camps in Germany at the time. So I can't even fathom that or imagine. But the longevity for people who chose how they responded to it made a difference of actually life and death itself. And so that's where I want to do is I want to choose how I approach things, and I want to help and coach and lead and guide and shepherd people. And that aspect of it is you do have a choice. There is tough stuff out there, and the aspect of it I knew in 2000, I was diagnosed with lymphoma, and that didn't sound like I had a lot of choice about that, but I could choose my response to that, and was blessed by the good Lord, and I'm here today. So, but the aspect of it is, I know that there's tough stuff going on around the world, but the more we choose our attitude to be a victor, is more likely the outcome. I guess you could see by the length of my answer how strongly I feel about it.
I love it. And we're not done talking about it. This is obviously we've worked together before, so I know a bit about your background with Husqvarna and with Vistage, and I could ask you a million questions. But for me to start the conversation around this concept of stress and the choices we have around stress and how we can reframe our approach, our response, and not just the impact that has on us, but those around us, to me, selfishly, is such an important place to start the conversation. So when you talk about having this choice, I know in your book, you talk about different actions that we can take and different ways that we can begin to take control of the stress in our life. So what are some of the most effective techniques you have seen for people to take control of this choice and start reducing the stress that they have and creating that positive impact for themselves and those around them?
Well, trying to think through to simplify my answer because, again, this is a subject that I have thought a lot about in that process. I think the most critical thing, Michael, I see is being grounded in your source, and we all have sources. Spiritual beliefs, our practical beliefs, our professional beliefs. But most important, I find being grounded in our purpose. And the purpose is why you exist. There's a lot of books written on that, etc. But I can't begin to tell you how important that was because the purpose, vision, mission, and values we had, for instance, for our company at Husqvarna, and the resulting behaviors out of your values. Behaviors is how people really act out what they really believe, by the way. They might dress themselves up for a little bit, but it doesn't take long, especially with stress. You see who the person really is.
Yes.
And again, I'm not making light of what that impact is, but your strongest, most powerful people respond to adversity in amazing ways. In fact, when we were recruiting people, one of my questions was always seeking how did they deal with adversity in their life? If it was just choosing between whether they had a sports car or a regular car, then that wasn't where I was at. It was fact is that how did they, then it might have been a single parent, no money, wanted to go to college, how they worked that out, and a host of other examples. But the aspect of it is how they respond to adversity is telling you how they're going to respond in your work environment and how they're going to interact with others in that process. But the essential thing that I believe in, and when I talk about purpose, vision, mission, and values, I look at purpose is your heart, why you exist. Your vision is your eyes, where you're going to go. I always try to bring examples that folks can relate with. And then inside, mission is your hands and feet, how you are going to do it. And then is the values or what you believe. And values are so absolutely critical because what they do is they're so visceral. If you ask somebody to do what they don't believe is right, they'll say, I've got a lump in my throat or a pit in my stomach. So it's physiological inside of it. And another thing you'll find is that when you recruit folks is that they can act outside of their, because they read your values on your website. That's good. If they don't read your website, that's probably the first filter in the process, that they're not looking. But the aspect, they sort of repeat those things back to you and just, all right, I've got the exact right person. But folks can live outside of their values for about 90 to 120 days. There's some hard cases that can live a bit longer, but then it sort of breaks down, and you wonder, is this great hire that I made just had a lobotomy or something? But it really was a disconnect with their values. But out of their values, they behave. I call them the behaviors. At Husqvarna, we call them their beatitudes, B-dash attitudes in that process. But that core is, when you know what your core is and where you stand is, you know where to come back to. And when you sort of get outside that sphere and you sort of pick yourself up and dust yourself off, you know where you're going to go back to. So I don't look as a politically correct thing to hang on the wall and then check it off. We lived that every day, and there was no executive privilege about it. Everyone lived it. Myself, I had to live it every day, and I expected them to live it every day, and they expected their teammates to live that every day. But when you have that locus and center of who you are and what you are, you can go back to that, even in times of stuff that happens. There is stuff, and but it gives you, again, a North Star, a center locus, whatever term works best for you to get back to who you really are, I find is the most important. And then you start to make, when you know that source of your purpose, vision, mission, and values. My personal purpose as a leader is unleashing exponential growth. And my focus is on leaders, and I take on leaders who is anyone that influences others. And guess what? Every individual in some way is influencing others. Some of them pretty negative, some of them very positive in that process. But I really want to have them find a way to live up to their God-given dream, their potential, what they want to see and do in life. And that's what I take on. And I share that with the fact is I'm very open about what that is. But the other aspect of it is when I'm on that purpose, I'm playing at the top of my game. And when I get into sort of some of the trivia and stuff that happens in life and get pulled away by the world at times, I can tell I'm feeling a little bit off, and that's the time. Not if I'm not up, I'm getting up. I recognize it and get back up to that level. But I think that's where it starts. But there's other aspects of it is simplifying your life, is figuring out how to prioritize it, because first of all is your dream, and everybody has a dream somewhere in their life, if they can go back far enough that they agree what it is. First question I ask someone that is considering joining Vistage now as a Vistage chair is, I want to know, what is the future you want to create? And then I want to ground that into the present. I don't want to have that projected from the past. I want to ground that in the present, in activities, et cetera, because that dream is what lights us up, is generated. I believe we were created to create and generate. That's when mankind is at their best. We all have individual gifts, and that's a great thing that we bring to the table in life. And so, but when we know our purpose and we can release these, the ability to create and generate in that particular category, we are just simply better people. And so that is imperative, and it really is inside of folks. So I see folks I tell my CEOs, they can get caught up in a swirl. And I think it's just, I use an example, it's sort of like a giant Ferris wheel that is on Coney Island, And the Stephen King somehow got a hold of it. I'm not per se a Stephen King fan, but this thing's rotating faster, throwing people out, jumps off its axis and rolling down the midway. What a crazy picture, huh? But the aspect of it is our job is to slow that down as a leader. And I have three E's for that process. It is one is you got to elevate above the fog of war. You got to evaluate what the situation is, and then you need to execute inside of it. But the important thing is you got to find out, are you majoring on the important things to begin with and simplify? Because people will say is, oh, I got to take a time management course. And being a good steward of your time is important, but it should be grounded in your purpose and your vision and your priorities versus that, because there was a very smart man called Albert Einstein. At least he's smart in my book, that was for sure. And he was approached as that, how did he do time management? And he said there is no such thing as time management. We cannot manage time. It just happens the way it is. Well, what we can manage is our priorities. So I'm a big believer in Pareto's law, that we set our purpose, vision, mission, and values, and our priorities, and really you can debate whether it is this exact percentage or not, but it's always very close to an 80-20. 20% of you do is what actually gets 80% of your results. So I find that as imperative of simplifying and making sure I'm working on the priorities.
So much power there in one answer, from the simplification to the prioritization. I love your three E's. We could go back and just ask follow-up questions about that answer all day long. I do love how you talk about understanding your source and your purpose. And you've met the star of my family, my wife, Brooke, and
yes,
people will often ask, like, how do she and I handle the inevitable situations being in a relationship and raising our son and careers and all that stuff. And I try to tell them that the most important thing is our long-term health and happiness together. Everything else doesn't matter. So no matter what the inflection points are, if we can keep that in mind, and we can work through everything else. And in business, it might be a little bit different. The overall success of the organization, the overall culture of the organization, our opportunity to develop and bring people along, but we keep those things in mind. There's everything else just falls into perspective, and it's easier to maintain. You've talked several times already about simplification.
Yeah.
Within the swirl, within CEOs being attacked from all sides, all these other illustrations that you've made. What have you seen to be some of the real key mental shifts that have helped CEOs simplify in order to be more successful?
Boy, that is a great question, and well, I'll agree with you. Brooke is absolutely a delight, and in my case, it's Barbara, and both of those I would classify, at least for me, is Barbara's my better 4/5. So I think I'm exaggerating on the fifth for myself, but it's great to be equally yoked. That term is, we need to be equally yoked, not only in our in our marriage and with our children, et cetera, but in this world is we need to be equally yoked with like-minded people. I'm not talking about groupthink. I'm talking about like-minded people. You always want to surround yourself with folks that have that share your values. What you want to do is you want diversity in gender, you want diversity in race, you want diversity in nationality, you want diversity in thinking skills, etc. But where an organization or a family breaks down is when there's a diversity in values and the values that particular family chooses. And that's not something I want to mandate to someone. They have to choose that. But that's when you have a team in its greatest sense, as when that occurs. But as I was thinking about this, Barbara and I just recently did an exercise, yeah, around choice and choosing these priorities to simplify on. It involved a question that I put on the board, as you know, at Vistage. They get a chance to check in the mornings, write on the board, how they're feeling about life and business, et cetera, and what some of their top issues. Well, I always have a question up there for them: is what is on your plate? And so our members, great members, are putting this on their the list, and it'll be really complete some great stuff, et cetera. But then our starting exercise was, I asked them, we had a paper plate on their desk in front of them, and we asked them to take. We had a black marker and a red marker, and we asked them just a stream of consciousness what was on their plate. And they wrote and wrote. First of all, it takes a little bit to get started, because to get a CEO's mind or a chief executive or other executive's mind, you have to get them, have them pause for a minute so they get present. But all of a sudden, as they were writing all over the plate, one item after another, writing around the edges of it, etc., the next thing we asked them was take your red marker and just circle the top three. And that was challenging enough because it had written all the other stuff. But there is and I know you've talked about in the past too, in journaling and writing, et cetera, you sort of ground all of the issues. It doesn't mean you solve them, but it grounds it in a way that's not swirling around like a balloon that you blew up and let go, and it just goes shooting through the air around that. So they finally worked their way through the top three, and for them. And then we asked them, the toughest thing in the world is what in what order are they? And what was the very top? And 1, 2, 3. One, if you couldn't do any of the others, that would be number one. And if you could do number one, if you, what would be the second thing? So it's very important, and it sounds maybe a little bit like a trivial example, but the aspect of it is when you help people to think in terms of what their true priorities are. And an interesting takeaway from it was there was not one of them that in their three or their top number one was the same as what they signed in on the board to begin with. So that means we've got to be thoughtful and pause and think inside of priorities. And when we get clear about our priorities in view of our purpose, vision, mission, and values, it really helps sort that out.
I just love that line. Think inside of priorities. It's one thing to think of your priorities. We talk about stress again, to feel overwhelmed by all of the priorities, but to be able to think inside of those and now begin to really have, what's the word that one of my mentors who you introduced me to likes to use, Jeff Duden, have discernment.
Yes, he just is an amazing individual. Love Jeff.
An amazing individual is like the most minimal way to state it. But, he talks about having discernment. So if you can think within your priorities, now you can start using discernment. Now, to your point, your priority list can be properly ordered. And honestly, what you thought was the priority clearly might not be anymore. So that's a great way to say it.
Well, I shared with them, they have their leadership strategic plan in front of them with just a plate. Obviously, there can their business plan, because that's really the way you think to get to what needs to be accomplished. As I share with my folks, I ask them what their priorities are, what they're working on, and it's 1, 2, 3. And I always said, put them in order, figure it out, and you can cross out one, put it down to 3 or whatever. It's just a worksheet, but it is imperative. And that is my next question, Michael, is what is missing? This whole world, once they write that down, they start to think what's all is wrong with why they can't get there, et cetera. And of course, if you ask someone or even imply with the words wrong, or about wrong, is you lose the generative skills of people. So my question is not what is wrong, it's always what is missing. Because our role is, and most important thing, is a critical thinking process, which we are not taught in school. inside of it. You might have had it in a course in philosophy, but it probably was pretty convoluted in college, and probably it was pretty forgetful. But the aspect of it is it's important to provide your first of all steep yourself in it. And it's always amazing. I'll have leaders who tell me is I just need to surround myself with people who critically think. I said, well, how do you do it? And then it's sort of a rambling answer. I've only had a couple pretty clear ones, I think, in life when I did that pushback inside of it. But I don't think there's anything greater. It's not teaching them what to think, but it's teaching them how to think, because what to think is their individual gift and freedom, in fact. But how do I sort down through that? So we were always working on how do you think through a process? How do you think through the conundrum? How do you think through an issue? And giving them an orally tools and process to do that.
All great examples. And even just the changing of the phrase, which might not sound like a big deal to people. What's wrong to what's missing? Words are important. Is
Yeah.
the words we use guide where our brain goes. The words we use create often unintended emotional responses, as you indicated earlier, that can then limit where our brain goes. So to change the word from wrong to missing literally reframes how, in this case, your members, previously the executives that worked for you, how they attack the problem. They now are attacking it differently just because of the one word that you replaced, which might not sound like that big a deal, but is enormous.
Well, the words we use, I always believe is talk is not cheap because it has consequences. And and thank you for capturing that thought, because I just believe how important that is, the words we use or the way we intimate on words, because you have to be open in that and show as you're genuine, authentic to be able to explore what's missing. And it becomes critical because it gives them a critical thing that's missing. Then is I have a goal and I want an outcome, and there's something missing between them. What is that? And again, as you work at prioritizing them and stating those, but even just in the process of thinking, I find out from coaching when they take time to, in quote, think that way, they solve a lot of their issues before we have to even get to the statement that they see it inside of that.
Very well illustrated. So I want to go back to something that you said even earlier that I've been trying to remember, because every answer you have just has layers and layers, and I absolutely love it. And I'm thankful for all the wisdom. But you talked about having laws and principles that you felt
Yes.
were very important. And for people that may not be aware, the success that you had running Husqvarna, to put it as mildly as possible, was substantial. I think you raised sales something by 1,700% while
Yeah.
you were there. So your reputation for what you achieved at Husqvarna precedes you by miles everywhere that you go. So I'm curious, as you led that growth and drove that culture at Husqvarna, what were the laws and the principles that drove that process for you?
Well, that's a great question. I think is critical thinking is an important principle inside of how you approach things. There is I think there's a law of reciprocity. What you give is what you get back.
Mhm.
There is a number of those. It is just absolutely and choice stresses a choice is one of those of how we choose to respond. And we've talked about that, but there's principles of the time, the realms of thinking inside of past and present and future, and where we're going to go and how we're going to accomplish it. It's one of those basic Albert Einstein things that you would put in place. But it is, but I also learned things is the power of your words and the power of your speech. is one of those principles that you speak into the universe, because the universe doesn't know what you need until you speak into it. They to be able to fulfill that and give that back. So the words that you use are just so important as a leader inside of who and what you are. And it's how you conduct yourself. There's another thing I've learned. There's a term is you got to declare who and what you want in a powerful way. They capture it inside of a declaration. But I found is that that declaration is, and this is an example of it, is that I came from a larger competitor when I was recruited to be uh, president CEO of Husqvarna. And in that process, I had studied them very carefully because there's a law of potential. You study potential. I want to know what the possibilities and potential of products, services, and what you're doing, because that's how we set our goals. But coming into this power of declaration was I found that on the very the first full day, there was a sort of a half day when I came and was introduced to the organization. And I shared just a short bit about my dreams and what I thought was possible, because I had studied what they had, some great products and services, probably weren't maximizing that. That was a good thing. That provided the opportunity. But when they showed up the next day, we had laminated $1 billion bills. At that time, we were 29 million and going backwards, Michael. The board didn't tell me about the backwards part. I thought we were just going forward. But the aspect of it is I know they probably thought the Martians had landed, or it was a second coming of something. But the aspect of it was we started to speak, as I told the folks, as even as unfathomable as it was, because their dream was maybe in 3 or 4 years, maybe we could double the company. And here I'm talking about a pretty significant change in their realm of thinking. And really what it was to pull them out, because there's a great book by a strategic coach, and they talk about 10x is easier than 2x. And the reason is when you're doing 2x is there's no end to sort of the good things. And I put that in quotes for the listeners out there, viewers, that I'm not talking down about not doing good things, but everybody has a long list of good things they need to do, and they're very frustrated they don't do them, but they usually add up to incremental thinking. And 10x is, I don't have any idea how we're going to do that. We got to sit down and figure this out. We need a miracle. What would a miracle look like inside of that? So I want to surround myself with a mindset of people, but that's the importance of capturing that and I know that inside a culture is the hard stuff, products and services, the soft stuff. They're not the easy stuff by any means. But the aspect of it is, if you get that thinking right and that declaration right, as I told folks, and I think it was a Zig Ziglarism, is that we would jump in a rowboat with a barrel of tartar sauce and go after Moby Dick. And but that's it. That's what happens when you set out and you surround yourself, and that's the important part is surrounding yourself, again, like-minded, not groupthink people. But the aspect is, well, it just seems impossible, and it's only impossible until somebody does it. And guess what is, Elon Musk does about every hour. He does it inside of it, but the impossible way has been made possible by many people. But the first principle is you got to be able to speak that into the universe, and then you got to be able to do vision casting. There's a great book by Andy Stanley on vision casting. He calls it visioneering. But that is, you're casting your words into the future and who and what you be. Now you have to be serious about it, or you'll be just listed as a daydreamer inside of it. But how important those are, and those are principles in my book.
And for the people who are watching, that book Visioneering is over your right shoulder. So they can get an idea of what it looks like before they go by. Hopefully after Stress is a Choice, which is over your left shoulder. We should probably point that out first. But again, great examples from first understanding what those goals are, speaking them into the future, rallying people around them. I just love the idea of even getting past incremental thinking, because it can be so easy to just think, okay, what's the next step? What's the next step? What's the next step? And unfortunately, that can lead to a hamster wheel of steps that we get stuck on and we never even get off of. So I really love that example. And I thought it was great where you talked about you had already been studying Husqvarna because at the time you were working for a competitor. And I'm sure studying them from a competitor's lens gave you a real advantage when you were coming into the organization to get started. And as you were illustrating that, you mentioned you love to study potential because you tie potential, or what you see as potential, into setting goals. Yes. And I would be thrilled if you could walk us through in a little bit more detail how you use potential in order to set and attain goals.
Great question. We believed in being a data-driven organization before. Data now is a buzzword. Most people don't totally understand what to do with it. It's one of the greatest positions. There were prompt engineers with AI coming in. Now this next position really is data analyst. It's the hottest thing out there. And it's so important because there's a Peter Drucker quote I live by, is that in God we trust, all others bring data. And so that's how we studied that market in intensity. So there was, in a way, we're professional products. So when I use the term consumer, sometimes people interpret that as the low end, and then the professionals as the other end. Yes, we sold professional level equipment, but there is a consumer packaging, I think they use the term is. We started the study of geodemographics before people even thought about that. Well, and especially in the field of outdoor power equipment. So what we studied is there's certain people somewhere that have a higher or lower propensity to buy our products. Where are they at? So we unpacked it. I was really fortunate to get with both a sociologist and demographic studier, Peter Huber and Associates. Just an anthropology is a study of people. He was an anthropologist. He went to New Guinea to study how people do stuff. That's where they seem to cut their chops and create that. But that's really is important. We wanted to study who was doing what, how were they doing it, et cetera, how were they presently doing, and what would help them in the future. So then you study it by demographics, and there's a number of studies that utilize that, and by creating profiles of people that are likely to buy something, and the different levels of it. And then is those different levels of people, where are they at? And how do we reach them? And in our particular is who uses the premium end of outdoor power equipment, where are they located, and by ethnic group. And it used to be, it was the Claritas was a system that they used at the time. And now it had about 20 classifications. Now it has 60, if you can believe that. But we studied that, who those people were and what classification they fell in by zip code, using data from the census report and mapping this and graphing it, so we knew exactly how we were going to target that market. But we knew is what was the potential by manufacturer shipments and reports. We're figuring out is what share that we had of that, what was the potential for it. And we, in fact, Mike, we didn't, in fact, I banned it because we were expecting to grow by 1,000+% in that, almost 2,000 in that process. But I told folks I never wanted to set our goals based on what we did last year. Now, as a public corporation, you have to sort of report that stuff in your quarterly reports, but on the inside was, what was our goal? And it was set by what what level of potential we were going to be able to market share of that potential we were able to get, because you'd have to invest in marketing and salespeople and stuff. And so there, you had to be careful about that and be a good steward of capital investments, et cetera. But with that said, is we really target where we were going to go in that focus, because we had the game book. And we knew what we were going to do it and how we were going to approach it. And we studied our competitors, what they were doing and what would actually set us apart. And we created what we call our organization chart. You know, folks talk about all organization charts. They always complain about everything's a silo. So how do we draw an organization chart? I grew up on a farm. It looks like silos to me inside of it. So we drew a customer donut, is what I called it. The customer was in the middle. The people who directly interact with them on a day-to-day basis was the next ring out, and the ring outside of that was the other folks that were providing support to the people who were directly supporting the customers. So I wanted to change that. When you walked down our halls, you saw pictures of our customers, and I really wanted to bring them home into our organization. And that was in addition to our purpose, vision, mission, and values. It was all in our organization. We pictured it in different ways throughout our whole organization. But to say that is, we were looking at what that potential is and where we could go, so that we were more surgical about how we focused our dollars, our efforts, et cetera. And again, that was simplifying and prioritizing, back to that lesson that we talked about. So we did that in different areas.
I love coming back to that same concept: simplify, prioritize, simplify, prioritize. It sounds, to reuse the word, so simple, but as you illustrated, there really is layers and nuance to the whole process. So you talked about setting potential-based goals based on against LY results for goals. You talked about speaking it into the future, improving by almost 2,000%. So I think when people think about scaling and they think about success and they hear numbers like that, they're like, oh, wow, that's so amazing. It must have been so much fun. It must have been so exciting and so enjoyable. But often success can breed unexpected challenges or new obstacles that need to be overcome. So as people are looking at the ability to scale their business or maximize their potential, what are some of the challenges that your success created and you had to navigate with your team?
Well, you place a lot of stress on an organization when you grow that rapidly, but I also think it's stressful to be an organization that's going backwards. So I choose that stress.
Good choice.
Side of it, but stress is going to occur. If there isn't stress in your plan, is you're not really challenging your creativity, your generation, and you're probably on the road to irrelevance. And I do not want to be irrelevant in life, either as a president, CEO, as a company, as we're talking about here, but as a Vistage chair. I want to be relevant because of the impact of what time it occurs. But, you know, the aspect of it is you've got to be very clear in your conversations about where you're going to go, because people can only go as far as they see their leader standing in the future. So there's communication is absolutely imperative, that, and you're sharing examples, thoughts, ideas all the time in that process to get them to be able to go there. It needs to be very clear about when they hire on board and say their employment contract, but I'm just saying their contract with the company that they believe they're signing up for. And you've got to be totally clear of what your purpose, vision, mission, and values are. You need to have develop a interviewing skills. You know this as an expert, by the way, of getting to the core of who are they really. And because I don't want anybody to be surprised by that. In fact, that's our responsibility. As what we tell people is that we wanted them to be able to achieve beyond what they can imagine. we also wanted to tell them is it's going to be hard work. We would tell people this will probably be the most challenging thing you've ever done, but it'll be the most rewarding. That does not mean that would have a position. Everybody could be an executive vice president or something, and they might have the ability to be that, but there's only so many of those. But the aspect is, I told folks every day I will improve your resume, not as a resume and wanting you to leave, but your credentials are going to get better every day. So we purposely poured into their training and development of focusing 5 to 10% of their base compensation each year for some kind of training involvement. It might be as a group, might be individually, et cetera, but we wanted to pour into them in a powerful way because people have to learn, grow, develop. In fact, as you point out, the books behind me, I am a reader. Our members get a book every month. Last month they got two, but in that process, and sometimes the joke was, well, if you did something great, you got a book from Dave. If you didn't do something so good, you would get a book from Dave. But it was pouring into them in their development all the time. Now to sort of continue in responding to your question is we found in that rapid growth, there was people who said they held up their hand, they wanted to be there, they wanted to grow, they wanted to do that, and they would do it. And we found generally in $100 million increments that people would hit the wall. Your true growth mindset people and desire would, hit the wall, maybe fall down, but dust themselves up and crawl up the ladder to get there. And others, they were done. And so this was the important thing that I shared with people. Loyalty in our organization. Yes, we want you around for a long time. A company that was founded in 1689. I did not start it, by the way.
Sure.
I just might look that way, but the aspect of it is that that growth is going for us to be relevant and to continue in growth. It's going to go on, and we have to figure out how to renew ourselves. And I've really been studying that. Is renewal is tough for people, how they pick themselves, even though they said when they signed up they could go there. But back to the point in loyalty, sometimes people measure it in years. I measure it and love them being around for those kind of years. Or did they grow every year that was relevant were they relevant for where the company was going? And so learning and stuff was essential. And sometimes people sort of tap out. And so this is the toughest thing as you can as a leader, but you need to help them transition to somewhere else that they can truly grow in a way that they want to grow. And so that was one of both the opportunities and both the challenges that for folks to go, because you want to simplify things, but when you're hundreds of millions versus 0.9 million, that things do get more complex because there's simply more transactions, more activities around that. And that doesn't mean you take away it. I want to do that in the simplest way as possible. And that's a challenge for people. And so it's sometimes they need to choose out for the best, and we need to help them transition, love on them, and care about them. As Marcus Buckingham said in his book Love Plus Work, you got to help them. Say, I love you. This is just not the place for you, and I want to help you find that place. And I thought that was a great quote, and we had to do that at times. Man, they did flourish. Almost all flourished somewhere else for the background that they got at the level they wanted to flourish.
And that's such a great point that sometimes it's too easy for leaders to take it personally if somebody's production plateaus or drops, or if somebody's attitudes change, or if their life circumstances impact how they work, or if the job wasn't what they thought it was. We're all human beings. This is the dynamic environment that's shifting and changing all the time. So to be able to not take it personal and understand that that's just part of the human condition, and be able to still love somebody and appreciate their effort and help them transition to someplace else says a lot about who leaders are as a human being beyond anything else. I just glanced at the clock and I've probably gone too long not asking you specifically about Vistage. I mean, you brought Vistage up a couple of times and you've mentioned being a chair, but you're not just a Vistage chair. You're a master chair, and you have groups of chairs, and you have groups of CEOs, and you have groups of upcoming leaders. And anytime I'm working with somebody and they see that we've worked before, the first thing they say to me is, "Oh, you worked with David." Yeah, yeah. So you're not just a Vistage chair. Let's get that clear. And I'm not the spokesperson for Vistage, but if people are listening and they're wondering what is Vistage, it's essentially an opportunity for CEOs to come together and work in a confidential environment with expert leaders like yourself to learn from each other, help each other grow, solve each other's problems, develop each other's businesses. So that's a completely unauthorized and unsanctioned summary of what Vistage is. So the question that I would love to ask you now, knowing the energy and the time and the heart that you pour into all of your Vistage groups and the leaders that you have helped develop for decades in that environment, how do you transition the lessons that you learned in such a large organization to the CEOs that you're helping now in a way that they digest it and can learn from it and apply it in their businesses?
Well, part of the conversation for growth in a company or growth in any activity you do is transformation. It's becoming a new being. I don't believe in change management. I could technically say there's some philosophy I could discuss about that is certainly okay. But transformation, you have to be a new being at each of these levels. And it also applies to myself is that I was a member for over 12 plus years in this rapid growth process, and I owe it to that combination of what we did. And but however, is the last thing sometimes nothing is older news than the former president or CEO. I tell folks, so I had to transform my life inside the process of becoming the best possible coach. And I wanted to write down those lessons, study those lessons, search those lessons that I had learned and grown from because, as I said, is some of those folks at that level are, they're a legend in their own mind, and they begin to tell you the same story every day. But there seems to be there's no future in that for where they're at. So I really work hard at being the best possible. And Barbara's a Vistage chair also and a coach. And we really just want to pour into people and share our experiences as it's applicable to them. But again, is studying laws, principles, strategies, et cetera, is imperative. And so the combination and the beauty of the amazing value of Vistage is you're in the room with 15 to 20 other peers inside of that from all different organizations, different industries, et cetera. And there becomes compound learning takes place. A great speaker like you come in and speak to our groups, and people have different takeaways, different thoughts, different questions. And as they ask them and hear them, et cetera, the members there, they become a powerful peer advisory group of folks because they're hearing it from another perspective, not just a textbook, not just a talking head. You interact with them as our speakers do to answer their specific questions, but somebody didn't ask a question is learning at the same time that's how that's being applied. So be part of a peer advisory group in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, I drank the Kool-Aid. I'm very partial of who and what that is as an organization. Vistage is the oldest and largest at it, and I think for good reasons. It's an amazing combination, but there's other great groups too that are in the marketplace. Most important is be a part of it. Because you have folks around the table that are not judging you. Inside a company, sometimes it's hard to share. Here, you can share without judgment. And the only judgment we're going to give each other is we want to pour into each other the best that we know, and we want them to pour into us the best of what we know. As Vistage chairs, we want to bring in the best possible speakers. That's why you've been selected again and again inside of it. But it is just so important to surround yourself with like-minded people that want to grow, want to go, and they want to grow, they want to know, and they want to go in the right direction. And so I think that is it's just an amazing organization. I'm blessed to be part of it and to continue sharing the things that both I've learned, but to continue. You can see behind me, I've read every one of those, and I need to read more, and I need to study inside leaders or readers. And that is it is essential to keep yourself current and because the what is happening in business is it used to be these long cycles because there were cycles. Now these cycles look like just a sharp point going up right beside each other because they're happening so fast, and you got to be ready for them. And that's what we do. We try to share everything, not just reiterate our past, but where something in our past applied, we're great to share it. But we also, it helps us to understand because some people can't even articulate their question at the time because they're trying to formulate it. We have probably been there, done that, seen someone who know that or connect them. So that's what we do.
And more. we only have so many minutes.
Yeah.
But I would like to ask you this. CEOs often, senior executives often talk about wanting to grow the business, wanting to grow themselves. They also talk about wanting to learn. They don't always talk about the two at the same time. They're having a growth mindset and a learning mindset don't always come as a package. But even those that say they want it aren't necessarily committed to it. Wanting and being committed to it are two different things. So as you have vetted members to join your group, and then as you have coached and developed the members in your group on that relentless pursuit of growth and excellence, how have you learned to identify these executives who truly do possess both the growth mindset and the learning mindset with the commitment to achieve and maintain both?
Well, yes, you're exactly right. Some people say stuff and but not committed to actually doing the stuff because it is work. And you have to focus and you have to set aside time to do that. And there's people who are caught up in the swirl that can say they want to do it, but they're caught up that of the most immediate drama in their business. They focus on urgent things versus the most important things in the process. There's actually a great book in is Are You Coachable? And not everyone is. In fact, is there's probably about 10% of the people that are really truly growth mindset. And I'm not trying to be discriminatory with that statement. There's 10% at the top of that. There's 10% at the bottom, which I call the criticizers, complainers inside of it. And they're not happy until you're unhappy. And there's about 80% in the middle of that will swing either way, depending on who they're around. So we try to search those folks out that truly want to invest their time, energy, focus on that. But they also have to be open because sometimes pride can get in their way that they know they got a problem, but concerned about bringing that out to a group. And of course, we want to provide a safe environment to get them involved to share those things that are there. But this growth mindset is important. So I work at it from, I just want to know what their journey in life is and ask them a lot of questions along the way because this growth mindset becomes formative very early in their lives. And then, as I mentioned, is how they deal with adversity. Learners are folks that they learn through adversity has happened. How did they respond to it? And who did they go to? What would have been helpful? What did they do, et cetera? So it really is my interview is their life's journey, so to speak. But questions along the way, how did they respond to these crossroads in life? And how did they respond? What was the path and how did they choose it going forward? But they also have to be humble in spirit to be able to hear that, this is a challenge. And there's some people that, for whatever reason, inside of ego preservation, et cetera, they don't want to share that. Maybe there's some things not so good. And I don't know who those folks that have a perfect life, but I found out I did not have, and I need to learn from experts, read from books, read from speakers, mastermind groups before I knew what a mastermind group was, and then the peer group. And this again it's really testing them to see through conversations and how they responded to both adversity, to learning, and how do they approach it. And if they're not readers, and the great thing is there's podcasts now, and those are absolutely wonderful. Yours is absolutely wonderful. Are they availing themselves of that? If the last book they read was Good to Great, and Good to Great is a wonderful thing. I've met Jim Collins inside of that, but there's been a lot of stuff written, done in addition to that. Doesn't mean there aren't principles there, is not my point here. But there's sometimes people say some stuff that was, that goes back a long time. Doesn't mean wisdom, it can be ageless, but it tells you they probably aren't checking what is new or current out.
Great point. Great point. And I could continue this conversation for a whole another hour, but I know you have a day packed full of meetings, and I'm grateful for the time you shared and all the insights that you provided. I took 2.5 pages of notes while I was listening to you talk, and this is not our first conversation. So I really appreciate all that you shared today. Thank you very much. Before you go, there's no doubt that there's people listening right now who are just peeling back, listening to everything that you're sharing, and they're going to want to learn more. So if people want to connect with you to learn more, your experience, your philosophy, how can they connect with you in order to continue the conversation?
They are very welcome to reach out through LinkedIn. They are absolutely welcome to join, to send an email, and that's David.Zerfoss. That's Z as in zebra, E-R, F as in Frank, O-S-S as in Sam, at vistagechair.com. And Vistage is spelled V as in Victor, I-S-T-A-G-E. So, I'm available at any time. My phone number is 704-957-9740. I even respond to smoke signals. So
Next time I let up my fire pit, I'll see if I can get
I'll
your
say,
attention.
hey, what's Michael up to? I just want to say I am open to share, and that's the point in life that I am. As I tell folks, I don't do this because I have to. I don't do it because I should do something. Barbara and I do this for the love of pouring into others to see them be successful.
Well, thank you for pouring so much into so many. And I've only met a small population of all the people who you've impacted, and just being able to see their results and their growth and how they carry themselves and lead their businesses is all a testimony to your success and all you've poured in. So thank you for all you do. Thank you for all you continue to do. I appreciate you taking your time to be here today. I look forward to seeing you again very soon.
You're very welcome. And you got a speaking engagement here shortly in 2025.
Yeah, there's at least one I got to make sure I don't screw up when we see each other in a couple months.
I'm totally confident the best man is on the job.
I'm excited for it. I've got it on the calendar. I'm looking forward to it.
God bless.
I will see you soon. Take care. Thank you, sir. David, thank you for another wonderful conversation. It is always a pleasure to learn from you, to listen to you, and look for opportunities to apply all of the lessons that you share so consistently. Thank you so very much, not just what you did for us today, but for what you consistently do for all the people in all the groups that you support. And I love the idea of thinking like victors, not victims. The concept of managing priorities and not time is also super important. And maybe above all, which is tough to say, the idea that I like the most is how important it is to teach people how to think, not what to think. Another great conversation. I continue to learn more every time we talk, and I hope everybody who listened today took tons of notes that they could apply in their business and personal lives as well. Thank you, David, and thank you to everybody that took the time to listen to this conversation today. As always, we truly appreciate you being here week after week. Thank you so very much. Before we go, let's thank our sponsors one more time. Humantel. For everybody that's ever thought that they would like to develop the skill set to understand what people are likely thinking or feeling in any moment, by accurately evaluating shifts in facial expressions and nonverbal communications to understand the emotional connotations involved, then I highly recommend you head over to humantel.com, read their research, check out their articles, and choose the training program you feel best suits your situation. And when you choose that program, enter the code Inclusive25 for 25% off of their best-in-class online training. I've done it myself. I vouch for it. Check it out, humantel.com. The code's Inclusive25. For the professional interviewers, head over to certifiedinterviewer.com. Learn more about the International Association of Interviewers. How do you join? How do you contribute to the organization? What can you learn through the in-person and online training programs? What tools and resources, networking opportunities are available? So much more. Certifiedinterviewer.com. While you're there, also check out the Certified Forensic Interviewer designation. What's involved in the exam? Who qualifies? How do you study to prepare and pass? Once you have earned the designation, what does it take to maintain the designation? What could it mean for your career? Get all those questions answered at certifiedinterviewer.com. And while you're online, please check out inclusive.com. That's where you can learn more about the programs our clients ask us to custom facilitate for their senior leaders, business development teams, negotiators, HR teams, and beyond, to teach them the skills, perspectives, and techniques necessary to connect with people at a level that allows them to share sensitive information under vulnerable circumstances in the face of consequences in all of your high-impact personal and professional conversations. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate you being here once again. Please stay safe, take care of each other, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.